Hi, second graders. I'm so glad to be with you today. I'm in my underwater room today, as you can see, because I'm going to share one of my favorite books with you called Big Al. It's written by Andrew Clements and it's illustrated by Yoshi. Today, as I am reading Big Al to you, I'd like you to do some thinking about theme. Theme, which we sometimes call the big idea of a story, is the lesson or the big message that the author wants us to think about. Often, fiction stories will have more than one theme. As we're thinking about Big Al, I'd like you to think about the lesson that Big Al and the fish learn. Theme isn't just a lesson that's learned by the main characters, though. Theme also is the lesson that we can learn for our own lives. So as you are watching what happens to Big Al and what happens to the fish, I'd also like you to think about how some of those things might connect with you. As I'm reading today, think about what themes or big ideas or lessons you recognize in Big Al. In the wide blue sea, there was a very friendly fish named Big Al. You could not find a nicer fish. But Big Al was also very, very scary. Other fish seemed to have at least one friend. Some had many, but Big Al had none. He did not really blame the other fish. How could he expect a little fish to trust a big fish with eyes and skin and teeth like his? So Big Al was lonely and cried big salty tears into the big salty sea. But Big Al really wanted friends, so he worked at it. First, he tried wrapping himself up with seaweed. He thought it was a great disguise, but no one else did. Who wants to stop and talk to a floating plant that has sharp teeth? Then he thought if he puffed himself up round, the other fish would laugh and see how clever and silly he could be. All they saw was how big he could be, and they steered clear. Very early one morning, Big Al went down to the bottom and flopped and wiggled himself into the sand until he was almost covered up. He looked very much smaller. When other fish came near, Big Al talked and joked with them and had a delightful time. But then one scratchy little grain of sand got stuck in his gills and he sneezed. When the clouds of sand cleared away, the other fish were gone. Big Al even changed his color one day so he could look like he belonged to a school of tiny fish passing by. He bubbled along with them for a while, laughing and feeling like he was just one of the crowd. But he was so big and clumsy that when all the tiny fish darted to the left and quickly back to the right, Big Al just plowed straight ahead. He went bumping and thumping through the fish. Before he could even say, "Excuse me," he was all alone again and sadder than ever. Just when Big Al was starting to be sure he would never have a single friend, something happened. He was floating along sadly, watching some of the smaller fish and wishing they would come closer. As he watched, a net dropped down silently from above, and in an instant they were caught. Big Al forgot all about being lonely, and he forgot all about being sad. His eyes bulged bigger and rounder than ever. and with a mighty flip of his tail, he opened his mouth and charged right at the net. The net was strong, but Big Al was stronger. He ripped right through it, and all the little fish rushed out through the hole. But when Big Al tried to turn around and swim out of the hole, he got tangled up in the net. He was stuck. The net went higher and higher toward the bright surface of the sea, and the little fish watched Big Al as he disappeared above them. When the little fish were able to speak again, all they talked about was this huge, wonderful fish that had saved them. How great it was to be free, but what a shame that the big fellow had been captured. Just then, there was a tremendous crashing splash above them, and the small fish dashed away. Was it the net again? Not at all. It was Big Al. Those fishermen took one look at him and threw him right back into the ocean. And now, there is one huge, puffy, scary, fierce-looking fish in the sea who has more friends than anyone else. Big Al. Did you notice Big Al and the fish learning some things from their experiences together? Remember, theme, or the big ideas, connect to the lessons that the characters are learning that we can also learn for our own lives. I'd like you to start thinking about the fish. What lesson did the fish learn? And it's probably a lesson about Big Al. I think you figured out some lessons that they learned. So thinking about what the fish learned and thinking about yourself and your friends or the kids that you know, how can the lesson that the fish learned match your life? Now I'd like you to think about what lesson did maybe Big Al learn? Can that lesson match your life as well? When Andrew Clements wrote this story, he wanted us to enjoy a wonderful book, but he also wanted us to think about some big ideas. As you're reading this week, when you're reading your fiction books, please pay attention to the lessons that your characters are learning and see if some of those lessons can match your own life as well. Thank you for joining me today. Bye.